It's been a whole year now, and I finally have another excuse to do another religious hoedown. By now you all probably have some idea how this works, but for noobs and the forgetful, here's a quick refresher. I pick 4 religious video games and pit them against each other to decide which is the best. The games don't have to specifically fit a criteria, as pickings are slim enough, but this series covers games which are typically made about or for that religion, which are heavily based on that religion in its themes, or it's made in a country that is predominantly that religion, and this reflects in the product. This series is a fun little look into each religion's contribution to the world of video games, and seeing which effort bore the most fruit. The games and religions will be Muslim 3D for Islam, Kings of Israel for Judaism, the Bible game on Game Boy for Christianity, and Cosmology of Kyoto for Buddhism. Muslim 3D is the long-awaited sequel to Muslim 2D, which was a Mario Brothers clone shipped with every NES in the Middle East. I kid of course, but that would have been fucking great. No, Muslim 3D is a 3D virtual pilgrimage game in which the player explores a 3D recreation of Mecca as their own personal avatar. It's currently in early access but has finished phase 1 of development, and the devs are currently implementing phase 2, which involves a story and RPG elements. As it stands, it's currently more of a 3D educational tool and a virtual tour than a video game, but it's still what I'd class as a video game, so let's get down to it. We're introduced with the version and what we can expect from this current build. I want to start right off the bat by saying that the dev team here have my utmost respect. No, really, if you look in their open forums, half their interactions with dickhead trolls trying to smear and harass them, and the other half are dickhead Muslims who are trying to shit on the project as haram. The devs deserve neither of these people trying to tunnel their way up their asses, and yet they handle every comment with professionalism and grace to an enviable degree. I mean, I would have probably punched one of these guys after 2 years of this shit, but these guys are gods amongst men. They're seriously a credit to both their religion and the games industry as a whole. The game starts off with this as the opening, and I wasn't aware that I could look around, so I was expecting some sort of cutscene to start and for this to be part of the beginning scene. Kinda like some artsy Deus Ex opening or something. But no, you can look around and wander around the elevator, a bit like Half-Life. It's a nice way of getting the level ready whilst allowing you to play, but there's not really much indication that this is explorable. I was just staring at the elevator door like I was having a stroke for the opening. The doors part and this guy approaches you. His name is Nadim. I like Nadim because he's the only person in the game who walks like a frog. Anyway, he welcomes you to the game, which is nice. It's super rare that someone personally greets you as soon as you start the game, and basically welcomes you to the game that you're playing. Nadim is like your game guide who introduces things to you and gets you accustomed to the environment. I probably could have figured it out on my own, but I appreciate the tour guide aesthetic that this gives, so I'll go along with it. I create my character and decide to go for a ginger dude with unkempt hair. This is Keith, dedicated Muslim.
Excellent. Allow me to give you a short introduction tour through Muslim 3D. Please come with me now.
Nadim is so enthusiastic at times he's terrifying. At this point it gives you the fanciest moving tutorial I think I've ever seen. It's unnecessary but elegant as fuck. So I barely get 3 minutes in and manage to fuck everything up by checking the graphical settings, and accidentally put myself in some sort of limbo, where I'm still in the menu but there's no menu to interact with. I can bring the menu back up, but no matter what I click, I end up stuck in this vicious cycle. In the end I had to forcibly crash the game and start again. I decided to go for a pasty ginger bloke with a pedo stash because, I don't know, he seemed the least appropriate for the setting and that kind of amused me. We arrive in the virtual lobby and Nadim explains what it connects to, and there is a map that shows us where we can go. Apparently more places will be available with Allah's help, but he didn't make any additional areas explorable for me. I always thought he and I were cool, but I guess not. I should probably mention that this game is £30 on Steam and is $44.99 in the US. The price is incredibly steep for an early access product, so early in development. I know the devs assure us that more content is to come, that DLC will be free for those who purchased earlier, and a few other incentives. The issue is that early access is almost a swear word amongst consumers these days, especially on Steam. An alarming majority of early access products are never finished on Steam, and the ones that aren't guaranteed to be quality, as devs have been known to quote-unquote fully released unfinished products after getting bored of developing them. This game clearly doesn't fall under the same category. I mean, it's no God Complex, that's for sure. It looks great and plays fine. It currently aches for content, but it's in early days, so I get that. There is a full game here, I guess, but it's not especially good as a game. It's a decent product, but its entire content can be beaten inside an hour. It's very rare that people will put this much faith and money into early access titles anymore. Hell, I only bought this for my video series, and even then I ummed and erred over spending £30 on what is basically a tech demo with promises that content will come someday. Yeah, the amount of times I've heard that, at this point, I don't take it seriously anymore. I presume that I'm wasting my money on early access products. I then meet this pink lady and mess up her AI path, and she walks into the fountain. Honestly, fucking with random NPCs in this game is definitely part of the fun for me. I arrive at the library and I'm told to speak to Sheikh Hakim at the front desk to learn more about the place. Sounds like a plan, man. So the library is a place where you can learn about Islamic law by collecting it in the world. I like this as a concept, but I wonder how much of this a Muslim would already know. I mean, it's great for me because I'm an ignorant little shit, but you know, people who are actually in the know, I don't know how valuable this would be to them. Sheikh Hakim is quite unsettling because he has like a monotone voice and he rarely blinks. He's either the first Muslim android or the first Muslim Oblivion NPC. Either way, he scares the shit out of me.
May Allah, who guides all believers, guide and protect you.
Did you see the message about the new book in the library?
Yes, Nadim, it's kind of hard to miss something that takes up about 5% of the screen.
Come with me. The book is right over here on the table below the stairs.
Oh, good system you guys have here. Yeah, fuck the Dewey Decimal System. You can find the information you're looking for in a book on a table under the stairs. Yo, Hakim, where's the book on famous Muslim basketball players? It is wedged behind the couch on the second floor between a half-eaten sandwich and Abdul's Game Boy that he left here in 1993. Sadly, Nadim lied to me, and this is where we learn the first rule about Mecca. Don't trust anyone. Especially not that bastard Nadim. Nah, I'm just being an idiot like usual, and I just had to talk to Nadim, who makes the book exist by mentioning it. That is one hell of a superpower. So we read the book of Muslim 3D, shit's getting better for me now, and learn about the origins of the game and its development. It's kind of nice to get a note about the game and the vision behind it, especially when we're in early access. Basically, they wanted to make a good Muslim-based video game, which is actually great because I feel like the market is actually aching for it. I mean, the Trail of Ibn Battuta people are literally the face of Islamic gaming now, and their games suck balls. So apparently phase 1 is more or less the world, and then we're going to get the RPG elements, which I'm guessing is more story, decision making, and running around and talking to people, as well as building relationships with key NPCs. I can't imagine there'll be dungeons, raids, and boss fights in this, unless Nadim's a much better fighter than he looks, and Hakim is a bit too protective of his library. Maybe those are like raid ideas that they're coming up with, I don't know. Finally, there will be an online mode where people can run around in a metaverse. Okay, I'm gonna hold off on talking about that because there's an area of the game that will make me want to bring this up and make this a bit more relevant. And it'll also keep me from gagging for a bit. We then have to walk this way to the museum.
I'm a sexy motherfucker. Sexy motherfucker. Sexy motherfucker. motherfucker.
Sexy motherfucker. Sexy motherfucker.
I decided to fuck around a bit and push this guy to the beginning of the long corridor we were walking down because I'm a colossal douche canoe. Here's the museum, and I have to admit, he isn't wrong when he calls it wonderful. It's my favourite attraction in the game. It features the world's biggest Quran, which is cool but seems kinda useless. The blue Quran, which is the result of 150 sheepskins. RIP the cast of furry tales, I guess. And this cool diorama that depicts how the human eye works, constructed centuries before anyone even knew for sure. It was made out of a box, a candle, and something else. I think it was like some foil or some shit. There's some bitchin' stuff that the Middle East was cooking up around the time of the Crusades and just before. And the Crusade was kind of beneficial to both sides because they got to steal each other's tech whilst invading each other's lands. In fact, the East at one point was on track to take over the West in certain areas technologically, but it was supposedly the invention of glass that gave a real advantage to the West. The paper blinds, for example, that the Chinese were using didn't do a good job of keeping the wind and rain out, so studies had to be abandoned on stormy nights. Also, a lot of scholars lost their eyesight in their old age and became useless, whereas the invention of glasses helped keep scholars active for that much longer. There were other advantages as well, but the gist of it is that they all added up and gave the West one hell of a boost. Still, just before and around the time of the Crusades, the East was coming up with all kinds of cool shit, and it's awesome to see it on display, as well as Muslim cultural advancements, as well as some of the prominent figures in the religion's history. I have to admit, it was genuinely interesting to walk around this area and read all the stuff, or at least as much of the stuff as I could get into in my playthrough without burning a hole in my hard drive, recording hours of me just staring at nothing. We finally enter the Hall of Dua. It's basically a shrine to backers of the project, which would be cool, but they refer to the plaques as in-game NFTs. Here we are at the Temple of NFTs, at the heart of the metaverse. If you're willing to part with somewhere between £250 and £1,000, you can have your name stapled onto one of these hallowed halls as an NFT. But that's not all. This virtual imam, who looks like Santa Claus, will pray for you night and day, and Allah himself will bless you. Now, if that's not a good fucking deal, I don't know what is. Sadly, I'm not Bruce Wayne, so this was never economically an option for me. But hey, if you're rich enough that you don't have to borrow a yacht from your dad, you might want to be immortalized this way. I do appreciate that this is basically like a Kickstarter backer award, but they refer to it as an NFT and a metaverse, which I think is a horrible mistake because you're sullying something quite innocent and making it gross. Nobody likes NFTs and metaverses. Hell, they almost killed Facebook, Ubisoft, and Square Enix. Honestly, I'd highly recommend dropping any and all reference to these things in future patches, because they're more likely to lose customers than anything, and they're not necessarily what I'd call NFTs. And this isn't what I'd qualify as a metaverse, it feels more like PlayStation Home for Muslims. I'd like to see this game succeed, which is why I say this. NFTs are a video game cancer and corporate AIDS. Pretty sure they're haram as well since they damage the environment. Regardless, I just would not recommend putting them in your game, especially not right now when they're absolutely toxic. Nobody likes them, and the people that do like them are delusional. So, in all honesty, drop this. Seriously, I'm saying this to help. Drop these things. Or at the very least, change the terminology. Just call them backer rewards and change metaverse to, I don't know, anything. Like, actually anything. It doesn't matter, just get rid of the references to NFTs and fucking metaverses, or you will go under, I promise. Now we must flee this temple of sin before we ourselves are sin. What, is that Agent 47 in disguise? Right, I'm gonna get out of here, I'm not safe.
Allow me to introduce you to Sister Mariam, our esteemed teacher. She and her husband Sheikh Hakim have dedicated their lives to learning and teaching.
Wait, that robotic librarian is married To that fireball? That must have been some direct intervention from Allah, surely.
Peace, mercy, and blessings of God be with you.
Oh, she's just as robotic as he is. That explains everything.
Here you
She also
are.
has a very
Your
American
own
accent.
Muslim 3D map.
Maybe these two are like the Adam and Eve of androids. I mean, they're born in the place where Adam and Eve found each other again, so maybe it's symbolic and maybe they just sort of lived there as the first androids. I don't know. I'm adding some Detroit becoming human shit to this because fuck it, why not? I mean, the first robotic person is a citizen of Saudi Arabia, so yeah, it's possible. Anyway, it's off to the Great Mosque where the big box awaits us. The Kaaba. Yes, I knew that. I didn't Google it. I don't know if there's anything inside it. I asked a Muslim girl once and she didn't know. We assumed it was scrolls or something of that nature, like those Jewish ones that they keep in cabinets in synagogues. I thought it might be like the Pandorica from Doctor Who and some dudes trapped inside it. Turns out we were all wrong and it's just some big empty room with pedestal-like things inside. I mean, I guess, you know, that was an option. Anyway, there's this cupboard inside which contains scents and gifts, which I feel is close enough to the guess that there's religious texts in here. And there are technically religious texts on the walls, so I wasn't far off with my guess. Regardless, it's kind of interesting because this gave me an excuse to actually look it up and see what was inside. Part of me wondered if there was anything inside and if it wasn't just solid or like nobody was supposed to know. But no, apparently it is just this, which is, you know, good enough. I met Nadim in front of it, and this is where we part ways. I'm like really sad or something. I'll never forget your presidential facial hair and green towel, Neil. So, there are a few interactables that you can do here. I would have thought that touching the Kaaba would have been one, but apparently not. I thought that was like one of the big things that you were supposed to do whilst on pilgrimage, but it's either not part of the game or it's not, and I'm just stupid, I don't know. There's an activity where you and the boys walk around the Kaaba in a tawaf. I think I'm pronouncing that right, I'm sorry if I'm not. Which is basically a slow lap around the Kaaba, which apparently means walk around or to encircle. And you're supposed to do 7 anti-clockwise laps around the Kaaba. Each lap is called a short. The Prophet said that you receive 60 mercies for pulling off a successful tawaf, and another 60 for performing salah and gazing at the house of Allah. Apparently, doing 57 rounds of tawaf is enough to exonerate you of all your sins. It's like baptism, I guess. You and Allah are completely square. Now, the weight of this is quite significant and impressive from a spiritual standpoint, which is why I feel like the game doesn't really do it justice, as it just does it all on its own. You push a button to start a tawaf and Keith just walks around the rings, like around the Kaaba, and the player can just get up, go for a piss, make a brew, check Facebook, scratch his jockage, send a few unsolicited nose pics, read the news, and then by the time they get back to the game, they've done several laps of spiritual experience. I'd honestly say that it could do with a little bit of interactivity, maybe to highlight that there is a challenge and reward that's worth it for the faithful. I'm not talking about having to press a button for left foot and right foot or do some quick time events or anything dumb like that. But maybe it not being automatic and instead being a set path that the player has to manually walk through would at least make the player feel like they've accomplished something. I don't know, maybe it's just a me thing, but I can't help but find it funny that you can work your way to an enlightenment or a new beginning by not even being at your desk. Hey, Mr. Sweeper. Hey, you're not even holding it right. Your brush isn't even tucked in the floor, you fucking slacker. What the fuck? So, some guy sings one of those prayer songs like they do at Real Mecca. I was once at an airport in Dubai, or maybe it was when I got to Mumbai, and this sounded off and everyone in my tour group were momentarily confused as fuck. I then start the next mini-game, which involves the prayer mat. Actually, these aren't mini-games, they're more interactables, but it feels like they should be mini-games, as they're more or less most of the content of the game. I don't know, maybe they can make this like a dance mat thing that you have to push the buttons right or you fall over and make a tit yourself. I don't know. The animations were a bit confusing as I thought he was doing my real pose before sulking because he couldn't do as good of a job. But then I saw that this is part of the praying process, so I guess I'm just stupid. I then found the holy concrete bollards, which were apparently used in the Crusades to keep the English out. They worked really well because they were 100% idiot-proof. We then go to Safara Marwa, which I guessed was the #1 department store in all of Mecca, but it's actually a sort of simulation of the distance between two small hills of significance, which you walk to and from. It's simulated in a long, large building, which is kind of like an airport lounge, and it's part of the ritual pilgrimage. It's like one of the several things that you do when you visit Mecca to more or less, you know, leave a better person or something. Supposedly it's to simulate the story where Ibrahim, who's Islamic Abraham, left his son Ishmael, who I'm assuming is Isaac, and wife Hagar, or Hajar, delete where appropriate, in the valley, and she ran out of food and water and ended up running back in two between the two mountains 7 times. Eventually, Allah felt bad for her and sent the angel Gabriel down to make a spring of water to calm her down, which was named Zamzam. That's a fucking great name for a well, and thus created this ritual. This does explain why you have to run for certain parts of the ritual and why there's giant rocks on either side of the room. I had absolutely no idea about any of the backstory, so I thought the running parts were a race and I got super competitive to try and outrun my fellow pilgrims. I thought maybe if I won I'd be blessed with a special prize, and I thought maybe the big rocks were the meteors that killed the dinosaurs or something. I don't know. But anyway, it's nice to know the actual truth now. We then go to Jamarat, which is a giant tent. What the fuck am I doing here, Google? Oh, so apparently this is where we stone the devil and supposedly throw rocks at this stone monument to signify that we've basically struck out at the devil. It'd be cool if there was actually something to do in the game, but sadly there's nothing. It's just this and that's it. There are a few depressed janitors and a few bins. Hey look, one of the bins says 404. Fuck! Holy fuck guys, I've found Glastonbury. So this is Mina, and the comparison to Glastonbury isn't too far off since it is a massive tent field. The difference is that these guys are here for religion rather than rock music. Actually, to be honest, depending on some fans, that's not much of a difference actually, but you know. Here are some beardy boys having some fruit. Yo, can I have some? No? Oh, okay, I guess I'll go fuck myself. The janitorial staff here are a fucking joke. Look at this ass clown in his scrubs. Doesn't even know how to hold a broom properly. Daft twat. Holy fuck, guys. Nap time. Yes! This is by far my favourite thing about this place. There's a communal napping area. This should just be a thing in general. I mean, the Japanese do it, so why not us? Ooh, here are the tour buses for tonight's performing acts. I think that's actually the tour bus of everyone's favourite Middle Eastern pop sensation, Mustafa Goodtime. Ooh, and a cameo from the Incursion games. The fire extinguisher that's bigger than I am. Oh, I wonder what this is for. Oh, there was a public bathroom? Fuck, I just pissed in that fountain over there. We then go to Muzdalifa, which is basically Muslim park life. More napping areas. They sure as shit know how to get on my good side. I like these tents that look like boobs. The fuck is this? The wheelchair ramp is hard as fuck to get around because there's a barrier in the way, and if you do get around it, you either have to go up more stairs or open up a large metal door that no one in a wheelchair could reach or pull open. And if it pushes them back, there's a chance that they could go over the edge and whack their heads on the stairway. What happened to Blessed Are the Meek and all that horse shit? I know that's Christianity, but come on. Gonna go and say a prayer for all the poor bastards in wheelchairs who will likely die trying to get around this ableist death trap. Finally, we go to Mount Arafat, which we can climb. I ran around it to see if there's anything interesting. I like how the sand textures and the tile textures become one here. It's cool that the tiles just go all lumpy, but I don't think that's what they intended. Ha! I made it to the top of the mountain. I'm the king of the castle, and you're the dirty bastard. No, not you, the other dirty bastard. Down there. Yeah, him. Fuck you. Here I find the Washington Monument. Or something. Actually, Mount Arafat, not to be confused with Mount Ararat, is a large granite hill that Muhammad apparently gave his final sermon on top of. Apparently it's the place where Adam and Eve reunited after being booted out of the Garden of Eden and earned the name Mountain of Mercy. The monument is believed to be the place where they came together after being separated for all that time. That's nice. Apparently it's tradition to spend a day up here asking for Allah to forgive one's sins. Yeah, I think I'd need more than a day, to be honest. I returned to the House of Knowledge and fucked around in the museum for a bit before deciding that I'd finished my spiritual journey into Muslim 3D and it was time for me to move on to hopefully greener pastures. But I don't know, these religious hoedowns, anything can happen. Muslim 3D is a nice looking, decently put together and interestingly thought out game, and honestly I'd like to see it succeed. It's not a great game due to its lack of game, but as a product it's not too bad. My only issues are the steep price, the reliance on NFTs and metaverses, or at the very least using them as buzzwords, and its current lack of content. I mean, I paid £20 for Red Dead Redemption 2 last month and got about a week or two out of it. I paid more for this and got exactly an hour out of it. Am I shaking with rage? Not really, since it is in early access and the devs seem to be working hard on the game, but for people who can't part with £30 easily, this might seem like a bit of a bad purchase. To be honest, I'd be inclined to agree, for the time being at least. Unless this really appeals to you as an experience, I don't know if I'd recommend this game in its current state. Maybe when the RPG elements are added, the game might be better. I might even revisit it and be able to actually recommend it. But so far, the devs need money but are struggling to get buyers because it's too damned expensive. The devs have done a good job with this game and I hope to follow its future updates. Once Phase 2 is completed, I might revisit it, making this a living episode, I guess. Not sure I can promise that that'll happen, but I can try my best. So far, this is the best Islam-based video game I've had in the religious hoedown, but I don't think it holds a candle to the likes of the Shiva or 5 Champions of David, or Guardians of David, whatever the fuck it was called. The former was made on a much smaller budget by one guy and just as long as this was, and yet it found its way onto my list of favourite games, or at least most interesting games of all time. This, in all honesty, feels like it's lacking in a lot. And I feel like, hopefully, the end result will be worth it, but I'm not exactly holding my breath that we'll get there. It's an early access product, and buying it is a gamble. And honestly, any money you spend on an early access product, or a backed product, is more or less just money going down the toilet. All in all, I think they've done good on what they've worked on. I'd like to see the rest of it, and ideally, it will be a finished product someday, and I can come back and hopefully give it a glowing recommendation. Although I'd definitely put it on sale every once in a while, because not everyone wants to pay £30 for a video game, regardless of what it is.
Sexy motherfucker. Sexy motherfucker.
Excellent.
Professor Curious is a fucking spurg.